Hi everyone, this is your Grammar 3 lecture for February 15th. We are having another snow day, and so we're on lesson 22. But before you watch this video, I would recommend going back to the video from 2 weeks ago over lesson 20. That's where we introduced the idea of the subjunctive, and we studied the present active subjunctive in that video as well. I recommend watching that again just to remind yourself about the subjunctive and its differences from the indicative and sort of the basics. Because today we're just going to cover more forms mostly. So before we look at the lesson, I do want to mention that your recitation, it's a reminder, your recitation is on March 15th, so officially now we have 1 month until your recitation of the Nicene Creed. So if you have not started practicing it, you really ought to start today on practicing that. And I'm not going to be as lenient as I have been about when that is due. On the 15th, I am going to require you to recite it, and you won't get a chance to redo it because that's the last day of the quarter. All right, so lesson 22. I don't usually talk that much about the saying, but I thought this one is interesting. So we're all familiar with RIP, which means rest in peace. But you may not know that this is a Latin phrase, so it's actually requiescat in pace, which is the same sentiment, but it's may he rest in peace. You notice that requiescat, if you're paying attention, you notice that requiescat is a subjunctive verb, so that's where we get the may from may he rest. Alright, so this week we're studying the imperfect subjunctive, both the active and the passive. This is my favorite group of forms in Latin because it is so easy to memorize and it's not complex to form. So let's look at the top of page 71 here. The imperfect subjunctive active. It's formed on the infinitive, which is to say the present active infinitive, plus the regular personal endings. So, for example, the present active infinitive of amo is amare. That is its second principal part. So you just add the regular personal endings to the infinitive, and you get amarem, amares, amaret, amaremus, amaratis, amarent. And it's the same in the second conjugation, so we get monere plus our personal endings. In the third, we get regere plus personal endings. And in the third io, capere. And the fourth, audire. Alright, so when you're doing an imperfect subjunctive, you want to start by adding the second principal part of the verb to each box, and then you can add your personal endings. This goes for the passive as well. On 71 we see the imperfect subjunctive passive is formed by substituting the regular passive endings for the active endings. So that's what we see here. We get amare again, but instead of the active endings, we have passive ones. So amarer, amareris, amaretur, amaremur, amaremini, amarentur. And then again, monerer, and regerer, and caperer, and audirer. Alright, so that's pretty simple. The English translations you will memorize for these imperfects is I might love, we might love. It's the same as the present English ones, except that we have might instead of may. And again, like we said with the present subjunctives, there's a whole different, there's quite a few different translations we might use depending on the context. And so this one is, the one you memorize is really just to have something to memorize. It's not that every single time it'll be might. Okay, one note about these conjugations. The only area where we have trouble sometimes is with how many ERs there are. So notice, let's take for example, monereris. So someone might on their quiz write moneris because they see that ER, and they think that they're adding an extra one or something. So sometimes we're missing an ER, and that happens a lot. Regereris, regerer, monerer, copperer. There's a lot of double ERs, and that is how they are supposed to be. And so don't cut one of them out in your conjugations. What I recommend when you're writing conjugations, like I already said, I recommend just going through, so pretend this is your box. I would go through and write the infinitive out in each box. I would write just the infinitive, all the way through. And then I would go back and add the personal endings. So for the passive, eris, tour, etc. That way you don't fall into the temptation to skip an ER or skip a syllable because it looks redundant. All right. So much for the conjugation. There is one grammar concept to add this week about the subjunctive. There's what's called the deliberative question, and it's asked about a past event and uses the imperfect subjunctive. So the present subjunctive, you would say, quid faciam. That means, what should I do? What am I to do? And then we have the imperfect, which is what we're adding this week. Quid facerem. What should I have done? What should I have done? So that's when it's asked about a past event. And we use the imperfect subjunctive for that. All right. And this, back to our saying for the week, this is taken from the Requiem Mass, which is the Mass for the dead. The Requiescat in Pace is the beautiful and final prayer for the departed. Today, RIP on a tombstone has become a common acronym for death. All right, and you have some new vocab this week. Let's see. So we have edificium. I refer to this word a lot, I think, in class. Edificium is building. It's where we get the word edifice, which refers to really any kind of building in English. Then we have antrum, which is cave. Letum, which is a word for death. This is interesting. We also have another word, mortis, and this is the word you all already know for death, and that one's feminine. So just don't get confused. We have two words for death. We have letum, which is second declension neuter, and we have mortis, which is third declension feminine. Then we have mandatum, obviously where we get the word mandatory or mandate. Otium, which is ease or leisure. And I'll have more to say about otium next time we meet, if I can remember it. Otium is a really important concept in philosophy and history, and I hope to get to talk to you about that some. Then we have sepulchrum, which is tomb. We have sepulcher in English. Theatrum, theater. Triduum, which is 3 days. From tres dies, 3 days. Vitium, which is a vice or a blemish. That's where we get the word vicious in English. And votum, which is a vow or prayer. So a vote, you've heard that in terms of a votive offering. That's a voluntary offering or a voluntary sacrifice as opposed to a compulsory one. Finally, we have this one little note about Triduum. The Easter Triduum is the period of 3 days beginning on the Holy Thursday with the evening celebration of the Lord's Supper, continuing through Good Friday, Holy Saturday, the Easter Vigil, and concluding with the evening prayer on Easter Sunday. So that's the name of a period, the 3 days around Easter. All right, and that's our lesson for today. One more reminder that your next recitation is on the 15th, 1 month from now. And please make sure to post your worksheets and your quizzes on Google Classroom today by the end of the day. And make sure when you submit them that you've actually uploaded the attachment and not just clicked submit. That way I can see it and grade it for you. All right, God bless you.